Hi, Les. Hap. Welcome to BizTalk. That's my great pleasure having me today. How are you?
I'm good, Max. Thanks very much.
Good morning, Max. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for coming. So let's jump talking about Kiffik.
Thank you. Thank you. We're very grateful to EquityMatch for organizing this quick video session with us. On my screen, you'll see the title Kiffik Biomedical Inc. Is a parent American company. I'm setting up Kiffik Biomedical Europe to run Europe, Middle East, Asia, Africa from the UK. So we've come in contact with EquityMatch to see if we can raise some funds to get the company up and running. There's a lot of work gone on in the background. This is a product that will spin over between healthcare, medicine, and consumer health. It has some applications in a great number of fields. What we've developed is a wearable but non-invasive device that can help get a fluid out of the body. This is interstitial fluid. It's the fluid that runs between all the cells of your body. There's about 21 liters of interstitial fluid, which compares to about 5 to 7 liters of blood. There's far more interstitial fluid in the body. And we've licensed, our intention is we've got lots of IP around this technology. And our intention is to license it out to companies who already analyze some of the biochemical biomarker components of blood. Interstitial fluid will give all of the same biomarkers in roughly the same levels in direct comparison to whatever the blood level of this biochemical is. It will be in the interstitial fluid in the same level. So the background is we've got a technology that will take some of this interstitial fluid out and make it available either in the hospital setting, in the community setting, or even in wearable technology where a consumer can have a patch on, drawing interstitial fluid out, being analyzed, and then sent to your smartwatch or your smartphone to give you critical levels. The biomarkers that we know of is somewhere over 3,000. Some of them are in daily use, like cholesterol, blood glucose are already in use. But as we go deeper into this, we'll be able to find more and more biomarkers that will give an indication for critical diseases such as cancer, we think, renal disease. A lot of the stuff that you've seen in all of the stuff that they're studying for COVID could be measured from the interstitial fluid. So it has a wide range. We will not develop a wide range of measurements. We will license that technology out to companies who already do those measurements. We'll just make it very easy for them to have interstitial fluid available to measure. So this is a little diagram of where the interstitial fluid is. It's in all of the spaces between cells in the body. That's why there's so much of it. All of the signaling that goes on is also through this interstitium. All of the stuff that runs between the cells connects all of the body. Give you an example of that is if you have a cancer and it starts to send out secondaries that could cause a secondary growth tumor somewhere else. It's probably possible we can pick that up in the interstitium, in the fluid that runs between the cells very early. That would allow us to detect cancer before it really starts to take hold in the body and give you an early indication that you should see your doctor and start therapy. The earlier you start therapy, the better the outcome. So the technique that we have patented is electropermeabilization. It's a non-invasive microbiological technique where an electrical field, very low voltage, is applied to increase the permeability of the cell membrane. So in layman's terms, we've made the skin a little bit leaky and we can get the interstitial fluid to come out without having to stick a needle into somebody. The key fact is 25% of the population fear needles, and about 10 or 16%, as one report I've read, of the population have a morbid fear of needles, and that means they will not go near a doctor for fear of a needle. So that's either an injection. You've seen some people reject COVID vaccination. Could be fear of needles. We haven't explored that fully. But if we can give you a non-invasive, non-needle technique to get fluid out of the body, which you can then analyze, it means a lot of the skilled nursing time, skilled technician time, where you need to go for phlebotomy, i.e. blood draw. If we can do away with that, we will give scarce resource, the human resource of skilled nurses and doctors, back into a system that is very, very bereft of the right key people at the moment. That's certainly the case in the UK, and I believe it's also the case in an awful lot of European and American states. We don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough nurses, so why don't we take all of this blood sampling away? The only exception to that is if you need to draw red blood cells or white blood cells or platelets out, you would still need blood. We think for more or less everything else, interstitial fluid can replace blood sampling. We'll have to prove that. That's where we need some money to do the early testing. But all of the early indications that we have is that interstitial fluid can replace blood sampling for most of the requirements of most healthcare systems. Again, if you need red blood cells, you need to take whole blood. So that's where we think interstitial fluid can go in medicine. I'll skip through a lot of these slides because we have too many to discuss today. The patents that we've got, it will also include the consumer healthcare, not just the medical uses. We think some of the big plays might be for the likes of Apple and Google and Microsoft, who are getting very involved in monitoring people's health through smartwatches, smartphones. We honestly think our technology could be a great benefit in that connection between the measuring device and the display device, which is the watch or the phone. We're working on more patents as we speak. So this is just a slide which repeats what I've said earlier. The patients do not have to go to a lab to have fluids drawn. The lab can track their values on a daily or even hourly basis. One of the things we've done is we put the device on a human and let it run for up to 3 weeks, proving that we can continually sample interstitial fluid without leaving any damage on the patient's skin. So for drug companies who want to measure the levels of the drugs in development today, they usually have to go through very complex trial processes where they repeatedly take blood samples to measure. This thing, you could measure the availability of a new drug over a 3-week period without any invasive technology being used at all. So we should save time and money, especially for the pharmaceutical industry. So that's just talking about the smartwatch. So if you can have your smartwatch tell you, for example, you're just about to have a heart attack, your cardiac enzymes are just about to peak, you need to stop walking as fast, you need to seek medical attention, that's an indication of where smart technology in a consumer environment can give you alerts that are currently not available. That's just one of the things we've used as an example. But again, there are over 3,000 biomarkers in interstitial fluid that will become more and more of use. And if I can just jump from the specific to the big picture for a while, if you talk to government departments, there are, at the strategy and stroke policy level, usually an intent to improve the health of the nation in some way, and also to lower costs. I honestly believe that with the availability of non-invasive fluid to analyze and artificial intelligence, we can get very, very clever forward-thinking policies that reduce the burden on the healthcare workers, but give better healthcare to the citizens of whatever nation takes it on. So if we can get this wearable component built into a lot of key biomarker measurements, then the artificial intelligence can look at the big data and give you trends that will enable you to give either early interventions or even preventative interventions. So the person who might suffer from type 2 diabetes, in 5 years' time, will get treatment to say, we picked this up early, you need to stop that. If you do, you won't develop diabetes. There's an awful lot of forward thinking can be gotten into with this product. And we've got a team formed of very experienced guys to help us take this to market. It's led by George Cagner, who's the president and chief executive. Abdul Latif Esalik is the founder, PhD doctor in biomechanical engineering. Nick Marr, very experienced chief operations officer, and Simi Ben Salam is handling all the regulatory affairs. We don't think we're going to have too much of barriers to entry for regulatory affairs because it's low voltage, it's very safe, it's not going to damage the patient. Interstitial fluid is already recognized by the FDA as holding very significant biomarkers in it. And the key thing with our engagement going forward with the FDA is that they've published a lot of information which says, look, if you can prove that this biomarker either goes down or goes up, and you can tie that to an improvement in the patient's therapy, we will accept it. You don't need to go back and do all of the work to prove that the biomarker is related to that disease. So they're already thinking that biomarkers should be used for disease monitoring and disease progression. We think we can help, if we can make this as easy as pie to generate a sample of interstitial fluid, that can be analyzed, and whatever marker that you're interested in is in the interstitial fluid, it will then influence the intention to treat that particular patient. Our model going to market is we're not going to develop all of these measurements. They already exist. All we're doing is licensing the Kiffik technology to get interstitial fluid to allow them to use for analysis. So we hope we can get some licensing deals done before the end of our first year. Our first year, we're going to need somewhere between $10 and $15 million to do the research and to hire the key people, particularly for running the clinical trials, getting the R&D finished off to get prototypes sufficient in number to allow us to do the clinical trials. So that's where we're at today. We have a good team set up in the US. We need to expand that a bit further. We need to do some more R&D. We have working prototypes now that can extract interstitial fluid, but we want to make them a little bit neater and a little bit smaller so that they can go forward and give us some more clinical studies. So that's where the company is today. We've got the team, we've got the product, we've got the intellectual property signed off. We've got some interested clinicians who are going to work with us. I've been talking today to the UK NHS research arm. They're very interested to engage with us as well. So I won't say we're pushing it an open door, but it's not far off it. There's a lot of interest. We just need to get more prototypes made to let people see how widespread this technology can become.
I think you covered it very well. And again, I just want to really reiterate that the Kiffik technology will help to accelerate telemedicine, remote monitoring, and really provide medical grade diagnostics in a more efficient and accurate manner. The non-invasive mechanism of action allows even the most non-technical individual to be able to deploy and utilize our technology with little to no difficulty, and that's really the magic of what we do. And then again, the medical grade diagnostics that will be able to come out of this, that we'll be able to analyze and as you articulated, will be extremely useful and take the whole wearable technology to a whole nother level, which is very exciting.
That's very fascinating. May I ask how far you are to be as specific and accurate as blood is today?
We focused on about 15 of the most prevalent markers that are in blood, and we can show that they rise and fall in proportion to the blood level. They're not exactly the same, but as long as you know the ratio, so if the blood is 1, the ISF, interstitial fluid, I should say, will always be, let's say, 0.8. And if it goes to 1.2 in the blood, it'll probably go to about 1 in the interstitial fluid. So as long as that proportionality matches the blood level, the clinicians won't have too much. And to be honest, it's not surprising because the permeability from the blood vessels, either the artery, the veins, the capillaries, out into the interstitial fluid is in direct proportion usually. It's related to blood volume and blood pressure, permeability of the membranes, but they usually stay closely related between interstitial fluid level and blood level. So we've proven that, or demonstrated, I won't say proven, demonstrated that for a lot of the routinely used biomarkers. What we need to do is to have a much bigger engagement with clinical staff, research staff, academics, and actually find out for the latest thought leaders in, let's say, early detection of cancer, what would be the key biomarker you needed to measure. Once they have identified that, then we can show them that that exists in interstitial fluid in a level that will be reliable and sustainable as compared to a blood measurement.
The key is identify biomarkers, yeah?
Yeah, I think you can call it, I mean, for some of them, biochemicals, you can transmute both words. Glucose is a biomarker, and it's also measured in biochemistry. Cholesterol, creatinine are actually chemicals that you can measure, but they're also able to be called biomarkers. When you get to the more minute in terms of million parts per liter or milliliter of some of the very interleukins and things like that that the oncologists will focus on. You don't routinely measure them in a biochemical laboratory. It would need to go to a specialist biomarker laboratory. But if we know what their importance is, we could soon work with the companies who currently measure those very small volumes of biomarkers to bring it more into mainstream. The only reason interstitial fluid has not been more widely researched and is not in routine use today is that it has been extremely difficult to access enough interstitial fluid to analyze. You need a couple of mils of it. To get a couple of mils out of the body has been a problem. One of the techniques, just to show you, is you have to blister the skin. And when the blister comes up and fills with that clear fluid, that's actually interstitial fluid. Well, we don't have to harm anybody. We don't have to stick a needle in anybody. We can bring you pure interstitial fluid out into a sterile container and then send that off to the lab to be analyzed. That's the real secret to this technology. Non-invasive, easy to get. Why not use interstitial fluid rather than blood?
I mean, this can be used to monitoring and do the diagnosis to any kind of, let's say, illness. Of course, cancer probably is the main one.
Cancer is the one that excites me, and the reason I say this is a family member has cancer at the minute, and I went in to sit in on the interview, and the doctor said, well, yeah, we'll start chemotherapy, we'll do this, that, and the other, and then in about 3 months' time, we'll evaluate it and see whether it's working or not. And I just said, sorry, you're going to wait 3 months to see if it's working or not? He said, yeah, we don't have any tests other than repeat mammograms or repeat chest x-rays to see if that cancer's spreading in the breast. And I thought that's a perfect opportunity for us to come in and figure out with the research team is why don't we do a biomarker evaluation after a week after you've started chemotherapy? And if it's not working, if the biomarker is not tracking down or tracking up whatever's beneficial for the patient, then we do a check step and say, well, hold on, is that now the best therapy to continue for another 2.5 months before you make a decision to change. So there's an awful lot of stuff that interstitial fluid measurements will give us that will change medicine. It will be a check step. It will take us several years to get there. The medical profession are pretty conservative, but they already know about interstitial fluid. They already accept that biomarkers are important. So all we've got to do is join the dots for them and say, hey, why not do an interstitial fluid sample, send it off, and if that biomarker is not moving in the direction that you think it should, stop, think about it again. Is that still the best therapy for that particular patient?
I mean, what about the clearance? You had to go through FDA. You were talking before. And how long does it take?
We won't know till we engage with them, and that's based on previous history. They have a requirement, I think it's 90 days. They have to give you an initial feedback within 90 days. But for low risk technology, which Kiffik technology is, we can't see any way that we can currently damage the patient. If it's low risk technology, it tends to go through a lot quicker than if you're trying to do a heart valve or an implant of any kind. So this will be a low risk device. They already have a list on their website, which I looked at the other day, of about 40 biomarkers that they say, if you can show that your therapy or your pharmaceutical positively influences those biomarkers, we will accept that as proof that you are successfully treating that illness or disease. So the FDA, if you look on YouTube, you'll see the FDA guys, particularly their CEDARS team, talking more and more about biomarkers and the importance. They really understand that if we can show biomarker improvement, it will speed through pharmaceutical development. A lot of pharmaceuticals, I think it's 1 in 10 get through and 9 fail. For pharmaceutical companies, if you can fail the 9 more quickly, it saves them millions, if not billions of dollars in development fees that would be wasted by, if it was a late result. So as you say, with investing in companies, you want them to either succeed or fail early. With with pharmaceutical development, biomarkers can help them fail early, which is a good thing. If it gets them passed, that's great as well.
In addition to your question about the FDA as well, there is a precedent set for extraction of ISF fluid. So we feel very strongly that we'll be able to get a 510K approval versus going through a full-blown PMA approval process, which will, as Les stated, will rapidly accelerate our approval with the FDA.
Okay. What about the go-to-market strategy? How are you going to approach the market? You're going to license, okay, the technology.
Yeah.
Will you see the biggest market?
So right now we have our 3rd generation prototype, and the next through the funding that we'll receive here early on in 2022, we're going to work with a R&D firm to make more of a commercial product. And once we have that commercialized product, we'll be able to hit the road and start meeting with a lot of the contacts that have been reaching out to us with a 4th generation device that will demonstrate everything that we're talking about, that the fact that the device will extract fluid, the fluid is pure in nature, and then start talking about the possibilities. And again, a lot of the companies that have shown interest in talking to us are in the pharmaceutical arena, in the diagnostics arena, and also the wearable technology. We feel that we can generate a lot of interest in in those industries as well. So,
let me stay 1 second to the last one, to the wearables, because I do believe it's a huge market for you, especially when it comes to adopting watches or whatever it is. What's your idea? For example, using I think the main probably is going to be the wrist, where to put your device. Probably watch will be the best one.
Well, the technology will be used in conjunction with a wearable, like a watch, or it won't be incorporated within the watch, at least in the early stages. We're not a wearable, watch manufacturer or diagnostics manufacturer that, instead of creating a competitor to the iWatch, a Garmin technology, or a Google technology, we're going to work in conjunction with them and provide the information that they need to make the data useful in a wearable technology. So there will be a separate device, our device, that will be worn near the wrist or on the. It can actually be worn anywhere, either through a band or an adhesive patch that will connect to the body, either on the forearm. It could be on your chest. It could be upper arm, really anywhere, and pull the interstitial fluid, analyze it through the biomarkers that device is key to, and then Bluetooth that information directly to a compatible device, whether that's a smartphone, a smartwatch, a computer. The exciting thing for us too is that it could also Bluetooth information to a physician who's in charge of monitoring that patient as well. So there's a lot of possibilities with having a device that will extract, read, and then disperse the information to a particular device or individual monitoring those patients.
I mean, how long do you think does it take to start generating revenue after the trial? Because I think you have to go through trial now, yeah?
Well, we think by the end of, through our licensing agreements, we think that it'll take probably another year or so to get a device that will be compatible with a wearable technology. The unique thing is that we can segment these biomarkers, since there's so many of them. There may be some that will be geared towards cancer research or pharmaceutical development versus glucose monitoring or cardiac enzymes. So there's virtually a myriad of companies that we could partner with for specific enzymes or specific biomarkers that will be attractive to their niche in the market. The consumer market, you look at wearable technologies today, the amateur athlete or the weekend warrior, if you will, do you be able to track your not only your glucose, but your potassiums, your calciums, your things like that are important to performance issues, both on a professional, superior, non-professional, or the weekend warrior, that'll be really useful to them. And I think there's a big market there. That market alone is in the United States is going to be about a $700 billion market in about 4 or 5 years.
Max, the other thing that has stuck in my mind as a key phrase for the consumer end is the worried well. So people who are actually well, but they're always worried they're not going to be well. My father died of a heart attack. I want to make sure I don't. There is a component for consumer healthcare to keep these guys fully abreast of their clinical condition so that they feel reassured, and we feel they will pay for that technology.
I mean, I'm a big fan. I do agree that diagnostic and monitoring is much better than curing, because when you go to curing something, the problem is there already, and it's going to be more difficult to get, to sort it out. But one technical question, this is pretty for me to understand better. With the same technology, how many biomarkers you can detect, or do you need to change slightly? How does it work?
It's a good question. We've got work where interstitial fluid has been analyzed on behalf of a cancer unit. It wasn't for Kiffik. It was a cancer unit looking at interstitial fluid, and they were able to identify 3,500 biomarkers. What we're not able to say today is, of that 3,500, can we routinely measure them all? Even if we can measure them, do we know how to intelligently use that data to improve treatment? Clinical research needs to go, academic research first, then clinical research, to say, okay, we can measure all of these things. What damn use are they? So there's a group of maybe 100 biomarkers they know exactly how to use. 40 of those 100, the FDA have already accepted as being a direct implication that if you affect the biomarker, you affect the disease. The other 60, the clinicians believe if we affect this in a positive way, the patient will get a benefit. But beyond that, there's still an awful lot of work we need to do. It will help research happen because interstitial fluid suddenly becomes very easy to access. They've never had that before. That's the technology Kiffik have developed and patented. And as they get more and more into measuring certain things, that will filter up to improve overall healthcare of the nation. That's the policy strategic decision level, policy level that I'm trying to access in the UK NHS now.
We are raising 10 million now for exactly doing where going, how is going to be used the fund.
Use of funds, hiring a team, hiring the R&D specialists to get us from where we are now with the prototype and into several hundred prototypes we can do clinical trials with, preparing the regulatory pathway, building up an organization in the UK is part of it. We've done regulatory affairs. We also need it for some clinical trials. We're hiring some great people. We've just got a new chief medical officer coming on board, very high-powered guy. He will help us with the research. He will help direct the research, and we need some funds. So we have a run rate for the next 12 to 18 months that will go through about $9 million, we think, was the latest figure I heard from George. So that's what we're going to use some funds for. It's developing the business, growing it, and then the business development will happen when we've got prototypes available to take out to the chief executive officer of a pharmaceutical company or the head of R&D, put it on them, generate some interstitial fluid from them, and prove to them that the thing is worth investigating for a license.
Again, most of it's going to be the R&D, again, fourth phase of development of the device, miniaturization of the device. Right now, in its current state, it's a little bit smaller than the dimensions of a standard iPhone, and we can get that down to just a portion of that, we feel, with the engineering group that we're working with. And then again, the roadshow, and then a big portion of that money will be devoted to research and further development. And as Les had mentioned, there are 40 some biomarkers that are FDA approved, all of which are very valuable. With the bringing on our chief medical officer, he has spent a lot of time researching and doing a lot of development work around the interstitial fluid. And one interesting study that they have done for the last, probably 5 to 8 years, is that they've identified that virtually in every, whether it's trauma or virtually every disease state, there's a conglomeration of about 20 biomarkers that are prevalent in all disease states. And obviously that will be an area of focus for us moving forward. But with that, we have to do a lot of peer-reviewed research and development of that and proving those out as well. And we think that we're very bullish on the fact that we're going to be able to do that very, very easily. The trouble up until now, interstitial fluid, because it's a more pure biologic than blood, because of all the other things that travel in the bloodstream. It could end up being the best fluid in the body for research, development, and finding out what's really going on with the body biochemically. So very exciting stuff.
I'm very curious. It's possible having combining more biomarkers, having more accurate details in calming disease.
From a biochemistry point of view, if you had a panel of blood results, you could have confidence that if one parameter was up, there would usually be a corresponding other parameter that would go down, so that, and this is what we're trying to do, we're trying to give an indication to the clinician what is happening in that patient at any one time. If you have a wide panel, then the more information points you have, the more accurate you can segment the diseased population. If you have these conditions, there is a 95% chance you have hypercholesterolemia. I can see that I used to, in the NHS lab I worked in, we used to have huge machines that would be sampling maybe 16 chemical analysis going on simultaneously from one sample. If we can give interstitial fluid the same amount of fluid for these to analyze, they will be able to analyze panels very, very quickly. So you can put your ISF sample in to the lab, and in 45 minutes, you will have a full panel of results. That will give the clinician great confidence that they've analyzed the disease correctly, and what they think is the problem is actually the problem, or give them a heads up. Your initial diagnosis does not normally look like this when we do a panel of biomarkers.
Let me ask my last question. Today, you just the business I'm talking about get started now. You go through trial. What's going to be the next? Where do you see Kiffik in 3-5 years time? I do believe it's going to be a platform developing technology to be used.
Yeah, our global CEO George Cagner refers to it as the Intel model. We will make the chip that drives the laptop. We will make the sampling part of any lab analysis. So we'll give you the sample of interstitial fluid, and you will pay us a license fee to use our technology in your technology. So loads and loads of global multi-billion-dollar lab equipment companies will pay us a license to develop an interstitial fluid analysis line. Does that answer your question, Max?
Absolutely. Let me thank you so much for coming to BizTalk. It's been a very great pleasure for me, and we do all our best to help you to raise this 10 million and go to the trial and go to market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mac. And again, thank you for allowing us to be on the EquityMatch platform. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Max.